to the Old Testament prophets, and this I think will be my last prophecy. If you go to nobabies.net and scroll down, there's where you can get a hold of me. Info.nobabies.net. You can go there. If you do leave a comment, and I've had almost no comments, if you do leave one, please go to here and give me a heads up. Say, hey, I commented on this and such a show, so I can go see what you posted in my name, so to speak. Obviously, everybody on these YouTube presentations is disposed to say, like, hit the like button, hit the share button, share it with a bunch of people, and subscribe, and that's proper. That will increase their traffic, their profile, and they maybe get monetized, paid a bit. I have no intention of being paid. Don't think I could at this point anyway. But I would like to have as many people as possible know what I have to say. So if you do the like, share, subscribe, and really share it around, you just might be the person that saves the planet. Having done what I could. Alrighty. And this one is about, this is the prophecy about extra. Give me a moment here. As usual, the machine is playing cat and mouse with me. Okay, extraterrestrials. You might wonder why the last prophecy of the last Old Testament prophet should address extraterrestrials. You think I'm mixing up centuries, but in fact, prophecy remains the same. And a friend was addressing us when I was in high school. This is just a little witticism. High school auditorium, and he began, when I was in high school, you may be thinking I'm an expert up here, but let me remind you, an X is a has been, and a spurt is a drip under pressure. I consider those words to live by and have clutched them in my heart for 2 generations. Here are words from Ezekiel. Ezekiel is a major prophet you've heard of. No, is likely. And he gives the time and place of his vision. And he sees a whirlwind, and there's a fire and cloud, and the sky lights up, and there's these strange creatures. And now as they beheld the living creatures, behold, one wheel upon the earth by the living creatures, with his 4 faces. The appearance of the wheels and their work was like unto the color of beryl, and they 4 had one likeness, and their appearance and their work as it was as it were a wheel within the middle of a wheel, and when they went upon their 4 sides, and they turned not when they went. As for the rings, they were so high that they were dreadful, and their rings were full of eyes round about them 4. All right. Had I but that kind of ability to write. The experts, of course, poured over that word for word. But I like more the old song, Ezekiel saw a wheel. I think it just cuts the chase, makes a point there. But all right, either way, whether you want the expert or the traditional interpretation, it's a UFO report, and it's right in there with the majority of UFO reports the past half century or so. Ezekiel goes on to demonstrate the imagery in the rest of his book in an intensity, make him a major prophet. For instance, there is a vision in which he confronts a wall, and he rips into the wall. He rips at the wall until he reaches a door, and he goes in the door. You got that? You are in the grips of a world-class narrative hook. You kind of curious about what could be in the room behind the door by now. Oh, it's abominations behind the door, and that is related to the single great prophecy. I can't write like him, but at least I think I can make it clear what the prophecy is all about. So I'm not betraying tradition, going on about UFOs and flying saucers, if you like to call them that. Reports come from in various forms and content. I'll try to characterize them more or less by a degree of uh, immediacy. Um, to me, the least immediate category is not a category of observation, but of interpretation. Any theory that depends on explaining something visible and difficult by appealing to time travel, parallel universes, interdimensional travel, and faster than light travel. See, it feels to me like you're explaining something difficult by appealing to something impossible. And bear in mind that this comes from the one person I know of who will offer you evidence for an alternative universe. Actually, give you evidence that you can check out yourself anytime. Um, but I have no special understanding, so you can believe what you want to. Then there's no understanding with respect to possible extraterrestrials. There's a category which is a single example. It's a robust example. There's a book, Death on Mars. You got that? Death on Mars. By John Brandenburg. And this is my copy. The book suggests a single visit in the distant past that might be readily repeated in this distant future. I don't want to steal his thunder. He has a dire warning, and he does have evidence, although I'm not qualified to comment on his evidence. Step closer. I've had to cobble this together from multiple sources, and it would be that would be visits in the past at periodic intervals. That is, according to the archaeologists, there is something associated with a Mayan calendar called the Long Count. It lasts some years. Last one ended December 2012. Each cycle is about 5,125.36 years. So reckoning from then, the long counts should have gone by thus. 5,125.36 AD minus 2012 goes back to 3013, 36. Let's say that long count began then, and the previous one ended, assuming I've got the month right and didn't mess up on the fact that there's no year zero. Continue back. The next next change was 8238 BC, maybe around April, and then the previous long count began in about 13,363 BC in December. I do not consider this to be that accurate. So the calendar goes beginning the first long count 13,363 BC, Next, 8,238 BC. Next, 3,113 BC. Next, 2012 AD. So what's going on? Oh, what was happening around 13,363 BC? I don't know if you can see this. Wall there, edge of a wall here, steps going up. That is, I think, persuasively a carved stone edifice artifact, something somebody built with enormous effort, and it couldn't be done now. Well, you could do it, of course, with diving equipment, but yeah, what they call this, the Yonaguni, my Japanese does not exist, monument. They're built before 10,000 BC because since then the area's been underwater. So they, you reckon just any time before 10,000 BC, that thing was made. Well, that's consistent with 13,363, isn't it? All right. Skip forward to the next one when we would, and then of course it vanished. There's the Yonaguni monuments, and nothing preceding them that remotely resembled civilization, nothing that the hunter-gatherers wouldn't have left, and nothing afterwards. Boom, gone. But then in 8,238 BC, well, that's when the count changes. Sometime around 9,030 to 8,800 BC was the first construction at the Göbekli Tepe site in Turkey. You can see these T-shaped stones. Well, they're bigger than a person. If you push, and they're kind of in a circle. Some here they look like face to face. Some places they're arm to arm. So if you pushed them together, it would be shaped kind of like Stonehenge. Anyway, there you have Göbekli Tepe, like the underwater monument we just looked at. This appeared out of nowhere. Looks like it was made by hunter-gatherers. No other sign of civilization. They maintained it for a while, did a few rebuilds, and then gone into the mist of time. Next count should end in 3113 BC. That's when one count starts, the next begins. And in 3100 to 3050, somewhere in that range, first Egyptian pharaoh. This is a it's called the Merimda head from about the same time as the first pharaoh. Right, so Egyptian civilization pulls itself together and starts doing things. That's one of the early things. It looks so utterly unlike later Egyptian art. I won't show you a picture of the pyramids. I imagine you know what they look like. Now then, in 2012 AD, much like the present, pretty much is the present, globalism's very striking, maybe nauseating feature of public life and discourse. What makes three? That makes three long count cycles. That's right. 4 landmarks, 3 cycles of the same length. So each cycle, roughly speaking, shows the abrupt appearance of an incredibly advanced civilization compared to what was present a century or two before. That's quite surprising, since the Mayans should, on the face of it, have known nothing about any of these civilizations, societies, technologies. You're welcome to make the assumption that something came along and said, You must mobilize in enormous groups. That's what all these things have in common. If you were to guess that, then you still need to choose, are these visitors blessing us with the treasures of civilization or cursing us with the merging of populations and thus dooming us to extinction? Maybe globalism is part of exactly the same agenda. After all, the years are not exact, or maybe they said they're toast. It took one look around and said our work's done. Of course, the long cycle time implies that they have a number of excuse me, planets to call on in pursuit of their agenda. So they're doing a circuit, maybe, and that would account for it being only approximate. Bulk of the hints of extraterrestrial. Okay, that's the Mayan count. Now, the bulk of hints of extraterrestrial consists of classical UFO sightings or people reporting seeing unrecognized lights in the sky. I'd rather prefer the modern term UAP, unobserved aerial phenomenon, or aerial phenomena. Using the word object seems to me to prejudice the case in favor of there actually being something solid up there. UAPs range from Ezekiel to the Battle of Los Angeles. And I think I've got the um, city right. Lights on the over the Pacific were interpreted as incoming Japanese aircraft we were at war at the time. Being World War II, and thousands of anti-aircraft rounds were fired at these lights. Didn't hit anything, didn't get a response. Uh, I suppose if they'd seen Ezekiel's wheel, they'd have opened fire on it. Um, there's a club called MUFON, which I think means Mutual UFO Network. There's an address. You know, you go to the list to go to movie scripts and find this movie, and you could find the address and the email number and a phone number. Um, if you want to see sightings like that, they've got a lot of them in the journal. Okay, these UAPs apparently move at supersonic speeds without creating shock waves. I guess I could design for you a craft that could do that. But the obvious interpretation is that there's nothing there. It's been shown that photons can interact with each other. That would include light and radar beams, right? Um, and with electrons. And from that knowledge, it's only a matter of some really clever engineering to project luminous images anywhere in the atmosphere. There is a question as to why anybody, terrestrial or extraterrestrial, would want to do that. If they wanted their projections to be noticed, they'd make them appear at regular intervals in the same place. You know, 2 o'clock on Saturday afternoon, they spend an hour above the White House. They'd get a lot of pictures taken that after the first few months. Um, and if they wanted them to be inconspicuous, they wanted us not to notice them, we'll give them navigation lights, you know, red on the right, green on the left, strobe light. Like ordinary airplanes, people would ignore them. One purpose does come to mind. That's they're just a distraction. There might be real objects imperfectly cloaked, and the conspicuous lights are there to distract observers. A couple other odd things. One is, in spite of the fact so many people carrying really good cameras, images are poor and rather shaky. The frightening notion would be that somehow something is influencing people not just to go expeditiously about the business of making record shots. I wouldn't be good if they could control our minds well enough to keep us from doing what would seem reasonable. Another thing quite rarely reported is that the lights seem to be associated with ICBM launchers and malfunctions. You know, the ICBM launching station goes offline and there's a flying saucer overhead somewhere. Um, um, Maybe they don't want us to have an all-out nuclear war. Maybe they have plans for the world after they've gotten rid of us. I understand Project Blue Book was a government program to collect, investigate UAPs. It was terminated because they said, well, they're no threat. Well, I'm sorry, I don't agree with that. Anything that can distract a pilot is a threat to navigation. They need to have pilots report what they see and then do a cursory investigation. Tell the pilot if there is an easy explanation and check generally for new patterns. Fact is, that's probably going on now. Not because they're a military threat, but because they are a navigational distraction. Okay, then the next close, as we're getting closer and closer to these critters, next thing is the physical contact. There's a interesting book I read. It's called Encounter in Rendlesham Forest. That's the book. I've lost my copy. I afforded a replacement, but it's not here yet. And so I pinched this image from Amazon. I hope they don't mind the free plug. I can't promise that's the cheapest way to get a copy, but that's what it's looked like if you got a copy. It's by Nick Pope, who was basically involved in covering things like that up. Anyway, this thing showed up in Rendlesham Forest near a couple U.S. air bases in Britain. Somebody put his hands on this thing, and we'd call it a UFO because it was an object. He could feel it. He reported having got some information and some instructions, which he in due course carried out. I won't spoil the book, but again the question came up of something controlling us. Not good news, whatever it might be. Now, there are some loose ends in the books. There's some things which if I was writing the book, I would say is, these are the pieces of information I would really like to have, and this would be go a long way towards settling the question of whether all this is true or whether it's overheated imagination. Another encounter, the carrier Nimitz got sight of a number of lights over a period of time, and they actually had some planes going up at one time, so they sent something out to investigate, and they had some nice game of tag with these critters, and one of the lights was seen to enter the water and was picked up on sonar. Bingo! Physical contact. All the other things could just be projections, but I do not see how you do that with sonar. So that would be an object, as indeed the one in Rendlesham. And then in Rendlesham, you can make a case for mistaken observation, but on a U.S. carrier, you got a sonar signal, that puppy's going to be recorded. And you can go back and look at it all you like. Yep, just when they said, oh, this has gone into the water, and the sonar man says, oh, something just came into the water. But either way, any of these things could be drones. I mean, they're occupied. and of course, the drones, you could cloak for them by putting up distracting stuff, just as well as for a vehicle. Um, all right, the closest approach is face to face with extraterrestrials, and there are many stories of that happening, so believe what you will. But before going any further, let's have a bit of fun. This is the whole thing's for fun, as I'll point out at the end. But right now, there's just an aside gag. While I was preparing the show, looking around YouTube for any interesting new ideas. One commentator, I'm sorry I didn't keep a reference, he said that the notion of a tenth of the people having been abducted by extraterrestrials is an understatement, that everybody gets abducted repeatedly. Well, if anybody's going to get abducted, surely it would be me. So in a lark, and I sometimes do silly things just as if I believed something that I don't. Took a flashlight to bed. All right. I slept the way you'd like to have babies asleep, right through the night. Oh, it was great. Haven't slept that well at night in a long time. But next night I didn't sleep at all. Mild sore throat by daybreak, and by 11 a.m. I was sicker than I ever have been before in my life. Won't embarrass you with all the sickly details, but I was one sick puppy. By 6 in the afternoon, I was able to function normally, and within a week, I was back to as sound as I ever am these days. My friend said I had a black eye. I couldn't see it in the mirror, but apparently the camera caught it. You recognize this person? You see the black eye? Like somebody slugged me in the eye. Perhaps. Well. So what do you get if you fight your abductors? Once I found out what they were doing, I took the attitude, well, that's the way they want it. If they think they can beat me in a fight, just even if you hold all the cards, bring it on. Let's do this. I had no trouble sleeping and no recurrence in the weeks since. Now, let me insist that's all a fluke. I don't believe I was really having a punch-up with the extraterrestrials. I only included it for fun. Besides, I thought you should get a chance to see the only recorded case of a black eye delivered by a extraterrestrial. In spite of my skepticism, consider assuming that they exist, where these extraterrestrials come from. If they make vehicles, there's one form of life that does so as well. Modern humans make machines we travel in, and we're close at hand. Any other life form would have to come vast distances. The notion that their civilization could survive long enough for them to make such a trip seems quite remote. Most parsimonious assumption must be that they are us or our descendants. Let's see if we can make that work. Earliest date involving humans we've covered so far is the beginning of the first man long count. Don't know why the man long count matches so well with human events, but let's assume that humans, or some of them, who had already been around for a long time, started to move towards civilization in 13363 BC. Sea level was a lot lower then, and you suppose that they did their agriculture and built their towns on the exposed continental shelves. Experience with more recent modern humans suggests that within 300 years they could have and might well be disposed to have built something like the Yonaguni monuments. That would bring us up to 13,063 BC. Of course, they should have gone extinct about that time, but let's suppose that in one area of the shells, they kept their villages intact of the right size. Timing from um, the end of our, let's call it from what is 1100 to 1400 or 1500, about that, we get the Enlightenment and the Industrial Revolution. Both required long-term social stability and laws of science and intellect. These laws don't change. They're the same one with. Um, they're just there because people think things ought to be fair. Even animals understand fairness. Even animals understand, oh, that one's hurting. So, given time, a society should evolve into saying, oh, we have to be fair. And that's the Enlightenment. It took about 300 years. That would bring us to 1373. A lot of societies out there, only one of them had to adopt the social norms that would stabilize them. So space travel did for us, take another 300 years to 12463 BC. On current course, I reckon our civilization survives. We'll be establishing colonies on the moon and Mars a couple more centuries. That would bring the time up to 12263 with humans colonizing Mars and the moon. Situation is stable, whole civilization continues to support the colonies. Let's say 1,000 more years pass. It brings us up to 11263 BC, and but the survival depends on the home support. And things at home are changing. The Ice Age ends about 10,000 BC. Somebody may have a better idea than I do about the actual timing, but let's say over a period of 1,000 years, sea levels rose to about the present level. And as it rose, the breaker line obliterated every trace of that civilization. People moved uphill, and that broke down the village systems that served them so long and so well. Maybe early on they had the resources to have prevented it, but by the time they realized how bad a problem it was, no population, no farmland, no civilization. People didn't go extinct on Earth. Some survived in a number of places that are known. But all trace of civilization was lost to the breakers, ground to gravel, sand, nothing. So, and then scattered. Well, the Martians couldn't survive where they were without support, and they couldn't return to Earth because the gravity here was too great. They'd been there too long. They weren't robust enough to function here efficiently. So they either died out or migrated to the moon. Moon was in better shape. Its close proximity to the Earth meant that they could tap the Earth's resources. So they developed their vehicles, their drones, their cloaking mechanisms, and no doubt other things we can't even imagine. And if there are any extraterrestrial types around at all, they survive on the far side of the moon, prudently staying out of sight. By now they know a dangerous lot. What might their attitude be? And I can think of only three possibilities. One is they're so foreign to us and we're to them that no form of communication is possible. I'm not buying that. If that were true, they might as well be drones. They'll have no interaction with us. Maybe they mean us well. You scan the literature on such things, and there's people who look forward to a time of, introduced by our extraterrestrial guests, time of spiritual growth. Don't buy it. There's some bad ideas out there. Globalism and populism followed to the logical extreme are both suicide. You want spiritual growth? Turn to your ancestral religion. That will have passed the test of time. It will be the most congenial to your current makeup and most likely has somewhat more people that you can, with biological hope, mate with. So that's your social pool. Another thing people speculate is they will admit us to some galactic federation where peace, love, and wisdom are supreme. Face it, that's impossible. Distances are too great. Besides, there is zero evidence for such a federation. Unless maybe that eerie predictability of things resulting from the Mayan long count as a clue. If it is, the Federation is out to kill us off anyway. If they, break up our villages. If they really did mean us well, they'd warn us of the danger of outbreeding, just like I'm warning you now and have been working at this for years. They could do it effortlessly. Get on the horn, take over our communication system, tell us, look, you listen to Linton. Or here's what he says. No warning comes. Indeed, if anything, the opposite there is true. They are quite content to sit and watch us go extinct. They will not lift a finger. So your first conclusion is that the extraterrestrials are not your friends. Okay? If they want us gone, the logical thing to do would be to kill me, because so far as I can see, I'm the only serious impediment to their dastardly plan. There are plenty of humans willing to have humans killed in pursuit of power, so why am I spared? Well, either they reckon my chances of accomplishing something are so pathetically small, I'd have to say, yeah, my experience too, either that, and I'm no threat, or they just don't want to live with the terrible emotional cost of having killed somebody. Got that? All those people in powerful places, the super rich, the super powerful, they've all got blood on their hands. They've all been driven crazy by the horrible experience of the slaughter that they had to go through to get where they are. Don't envy them. In fact, the extraterrestrials might even do us a favor one day if they're ready to stop nukes being launched because they don't want the planet stinking with radioactivity. If they don't want the world environment to be wiped out, they could not only limit our use of nuclear weapons, but they might arrange somehow or other to make sure that 10 billion people survived, even with a technology that could only feed 2 billion. Man, if they can communicate with us, can give us all clues, they give us the things. All right, all the young people are gone. You got all these old people, or middle age. Instead of having them run out and demolish the environment, you make sure that they can survive more or less. Over the short term, of course, they will die out eventually. So, the conclusion is that they will not harm you. If they didn't kill me, they won't kill you. So, two conclusions. Number one, they are not your friends. Number two, they will not harm you. Final conclusion, it doesn't matter whether they exist at all. So, if anybody gets excited about those critters, their existence doesn't matter to us. What does matter is whether people listen to me or my message. And so, like, share, subscribe. Um, you may be the one to save planet Earth, but don't expect the extraterrestrials to do it. They are not going to.